you're trying to eat healthier, here's some good news, and it's on almost every box, bag, carton, can, and jar of the foods you buy. The new food label. It may be hard to believe, but the new label must tell it like it is. No more misleading claims like light for an oil that's just lighter in color, or low cholesterol for a non-dairy creamer that's loaded with saturated fat. Now such terms are strictly defined by the government and cannot be used where they would be misleading. To benefit from the new label, you have to know how to read and interpret it. Let's take a few minutes to go over what you need to know about the new label. Of course, when you're actually in the supermarket with coupons in hand and maybe even kids in tow, you're lucky if you have a few seconds to look at a label. Don't worry. At the end of this tape, I'll give you our split-second method for label reading. Now let's take a look at this label. The heading says Nutrition Facts, and you'll find this heading on all of the new labels. Now let's look at serving size information. The new label has standardized serving sizes. This makes it easy to compare similar products because you'll be comparing like with like. For example, these two cereals. Of course, if the amount you generally eat is not the same as the serving size, you will get more or less of the nutrients listed. Also, remember that the serving size is not a recommended amount. It's a reference amount to help you make comparisons. Now let's look at the bottom of the label. It tells you what's recommended for good health, so you can compare what's in a particular food with what you should get in a day. You'll find the same information on all food labels that have space to include it. As you can see, there are two sets of recommended intakes called daily values, and they apply to people ages 4 and older. One set is for people who need 2,000 calories a day, and the other is for people who need 2,500 calories a day. Who needs about 2,000 calories a day? Most women, young children, older people, and sedentary individuals. Many men and very active women need at least 2,500 calories a day. But everyone is different, and as the label says, your daily values may be higher or lower depending on your calorie needs. And also, one should add, depending on your medical needs. Now let's take the 2,000 calorie a day diet, since that's the one the government chose as a standard. As it says right here, the percent daily values are based on a 2,000 calorie diet. Ideally, what should a 2,000 calorie a day diet be like? The label tells us it should have less than 65 grams of total fat and less than 20 grams of saturated fat a day. It should also have less than 300 milligrams of cholesterol and less than 2,400 milligrams of sodium a day. In other words, these are the upper limits for total fat, saturated fat, cholesterol, and sodium. But for other nutrients, total carbohydrate, and dietary fiber, no upper limits are given. The label recommends 300 grams of total carbohydrate and 25 grams of fiber, which is more than most people generally get. Good sources of fiber include fruits, vegetables, whole grain foods, and all kinds of beans. Now, let's look at the top half of the label again. Here we find the percent daily value information, and here's how to make use of this information. For example, if the percent daily value for saturated fat is 5%, then one serving contributes 5% of the maximum amount of saturated fat that one should have in a day, if one's calorie needs are 2,000 a day. There's still more useful information in the new label. It gives the grams of sugar and the grams of protein in a food too. In the United States, most people already get more protein than they need. Remember, protein-rich animal foods come with fat and cholesterol too. Eat smaller servings of lean meat, fish, and poultry. Use skim milk and low-fat milk, preferably 1%, and skim milk yogurt and cheese. Include more vegetable protein foods such as dry beans, split peas, and lentils. Not only do these foods give you more protein, but they also boost your total carbohydrate and fiber intakes, which is what most people need. Now let's look at the vitamin and mineral information. These nutrients, vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, and iron, are often low in the American diet, so look for foods that are good sources or provide at least 10% of any one of these nutrients. Now let's go on to the calorie information. Many of us are concerned about calories, and often that's all that we look at on a label. But if you focus on fat instead, the calories will take care of themselves. Keeping your total fat intake low automatically keeps your calorie intake in line. That's because, as the label states, fat has a lot of calories, 9 calories a gram. By comparison, carbohydrate and protein have only 4 calories a gram. There's still a bit more information about calories on the new label. It's the calories from fat. As you can see in our example, there are 35 calories from fat in a serving of this food. But wait a minute. We know there are 9 calories in a gram of fat and that there are 4 grams of fat in this product. So there should be 36 calories from fat, not 35. The only reason the label says 35 is that the numbers on the label are rounded off according to rules that make comparing products easier. So that's a story behind the label you see in front of you. Fortunately, you don't need to know every last detail to make smart decisions in the store. Now, here's a split-second approach to label reading. First, check the serving size. Next, proceed to look at the numbers for total fat and saturated fat. Can you live with these numbers, or do you get 50% of your daily value for saturated fat from just one serving of this product? Then look at sodium. If it's high in sodium, can you balance this food off with other foods low in sodium? Lastly, check for nutrients you want to get plenty of: total carbohydrate, dietary fiber, vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, and iron. Is it a good source of at least one of these? And to double check, flip over to the ingredient statement because it tells you exactly what's in the product. As you can see, the new label makes shopping for healthier foods much easier than it used to be. Now the only problem is how to avoid the candy aisle if you're shopping with kids.